variety of issues to tackle today because we're dealing with legal issues of today. But fortunately, I'm joined with our superstar panel, attorney Milton Grimes, the famous lawyer from LA, who led the revolution of videotaping of police misconduct. And of course, our crack research analyst, masters in tax, Vanita Banks, well-known former president of National Bar. So we have a superstar panel today. But before we get started, there's something that I keep running across that we have to talk about. And my panel will probably join in, but early vote and voter registration. Folks, in Indiana, if you've served time in prison, if you've been arrested, you've been incarcerated, no matter what the crime is, once the day you get out of prison, you should register to vote. I discovered, much to my chagrin, that the prison officials have been giving these inmates misinformation. So Indiana allows you, if you get out of jail or prison, to register and vote. So long as you're not incarcerated in our state, you can vote. You do not have to petition for restoration of your voter rights. I think when I looked at the docket, there was only, I think, 4 states that require you to petition. One was Florida, and they had a situation where they had a Supreme Court initiative, a ballot box initiative to get rid of that. So if you're in Indiana, folks, even if you've served time in jail, juvenile center, prison, probation, parole, you can register and vote. The day you get out of prison, check the website. Now, the second thing I need to tell you, I want everybody today to go onto the website and just vote Indiana. And once you type your name and your ID information, it'll give you all the candidates, voting sites, and all the information. And also check the address to make sure that the address you're living at is where your voter registration, otherwise you need to correct it. See, if you're in an apartment complex, for example, and you went from unit A to unit D, you need to change that slight distinction in your voter registration so you're not challenged at the poll. You can still vote by sending in a ballot affidavit, file it, but to avoid the headache, just simply check your registration today. It'll only take a few minutes to go on the internet, to go to voter registration status, check it today. Please, 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 because every vote counts. Now,
Attorney Lee?
Yes.
I also wanted to just make a point about your earlier point with respect to returning citizens having paid their debt to society voting. I wanted to reference and build on that point by sharing that in Chicago, there's an organization called Chicago Votes, and they assist citizens in registering people that are incarcerated in Cook County Jail. And so you can register those in jail. And this just applies, unfortunately, at this point, based on what I'm reading and have researched, to male citizens that are incarcerated. But the last day to register those that are currently in jail is Sunday, September 29th. And again, this is here in Chicago. So if you're interested in assisting currently incarcerated citizens in registering to vote, go to chicagovotes.com and complete the Cook County course 101. The training takes about 20 minutes. And so far, citizens can register those that are in the male jail, but registering women in the female jail is currently pending. So I just wanted to share that. If you would like to assist in registering currently incarcerated citizens in the Cook County Jail, please go to chicagovotes.com and complete the Cook County Jail course 101.
Well, thank you very much. They're very informative. And now, there were so many legal issues that came up in the last couple of weeks. And so let's dive into a few of them. Uh, First, I want to make sure we correct something about immigration. Immigration has become a hot topic for our political folks. And let's make some real clear. What is immigration? Well, in the United States of America, there were people called Native American Indian. They were here in the United States when immigrants came over and took their land, and that's ultimately came to the United States of America. And then there was people that bought here as slaves, involuntary servitude, the African Americans. So, but in the United States of America, we are a nation of people who weren't originally here. So immigration has been on our national landscape since the inception of the United States of America. It's nothing new. Now, in order to have safe immigration practices, there are several things you must have. First, you have to have border protection, which means you have to have officials like officers that protect the border. The second component, though, is that people that have legal rights, there has to be a court system in place. You have to have judges and lawyers to litigate the merits of their claims. So without these components, it's impractical, impossible to have a good and safe immigration process. So we had a bill that a conservative senator wrote from Oklahoma to address this important issue. Immigration problem, whether you had Donald Trump in office, we had a lot of people crossing illegally, and though he said he would build a wall, but there was no legislation passed to address the issue. See, ultimately, you have to set money aside to address this financial issue. And without having those components, folks, you cannot have a system of immigration that works in this country. So you have to have financial support a court system, lawyers, judges, and border agents. My sister used to head up the purchasing for the border patrol, and I saw the massive amount of money they spent at that time, but it was never enough because of the fact that when you're protecting the border, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so when they were talking about border agent, 16,000, people thought that was a lot, but that was not a lot because those agents, they work 40 hours a week just for one job slot. It takes 3.5. So don't forget that. Okay. Now, before we get started, the next one, Council, one of the things that have been on the news this week was a candidate for the governorship in the state of North Carolina named Mark Robinson. He was described by Donald J. Trump as Martin Luther King on steroids. Attorney Banks, do you review any of the stories on this certainly flawed candidate? Probably one of the most flawed candidates that I've ever seen.
Yes, I have, Attorney Lee, and it's my understanding that he is the current lieutenant governor.
Yeah. That's correct.
In North Carolina, and yeah. Mark Robinson, who I almost don't even want to spread any messaging about at all, right? Because his alleged, because he's denying it, vile messages, on porn websites, which has been revealed this week. Again, he's denying that those messages were made by him, but the deplorable statements, the outright vile statements that he's made about the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., I don't want to even reference them by making any comment about this person. And of course, he's been endorsed by our former president, who's going to be campaigning in North Carolina this weekend. It'll be interesting to see whether or not this Mark Robinson will join him at this rally that's planned for this weekend. But his statements are deplorable, outright vile statements that he's allegedly made in the past about being a, quote, Black Nazi, and just making such unacceptable comments regarding the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement, statements that, you know, slavery was good, and these kind of tropes really just don't have any place in our public discourse.
I read a little about him last night when I saw his name. You know, he's an African-American, and I'm from North Carolina. I was born in North Carolina, and I have often had a great deal of pride in people coming from North Carolina. It seems to have been the birthplace of a lot of our influential people in sports and politics, especially African-Americans. There's a certain wealth there in pockets of North Carolina, even though a lot of it is farmland. My grandparents were sharecroppers. They raised me there, but I've always had a little pride in North Carolina and being from North Carolina. But he surely does not give me anything to be proud of. He seems like a braggadocious, belligerent person who will say or do anything for his own self-aggrandizement. He those comments about transsexuals, etc., they were done some 10 years or so ago, Vanita. Am I correct? Or
Yes.
some years.
Yes.
But he you know, he won't step up and admit to mistakes. He's like Trump, I guess. He just double downs on this stuff. And it saddens me when I see an African-American, especially, we got one or two out here who do that. When I see them saying whatever Trump wants them to say, I assume they're saying whatever he wants them to say. I can't believe that they're doing that on their own, but he's not a source of pride for me in North Carolina. And shamefully, he's in the public eye now, spewing the stuff that he's spewing. I'll leave it at that.
Well, allegedly, he was on a pornographic website, and I forgot what his code name, but he was identified as a Black Nazi, and he voiced support for Adolf Hitler, and he advocated reinstatement of slavery. They had a videotape of him at a council meeting, and he was saying verbally, I saw it on TV, that some people ought to be killed. You know, it was just crazy stuff for a person that running for public office should ever advocate. And but then, because he adopted all these right-wing conspiracy theories, Donald Trump really endorsed them and said that he was Martin Luther King on steroid. Of course, that's absolute falsity, like most of the stuff that the former president speak of. And so we're at a point in our country now where we have these extreme folks like him saying things that are so outrageous, and it becoming societal norms. The things that he is saying should have disqualified him to run for any public office, the same as Trump. His background should have disqualified him to run for office. So we got a guy who's 56 years old. He got elected to lieutenant governor somehow. And it appears that when he ran for office, he's got a good share, Milton, of the African-American vote. and which the old adage, what is skin color, what is that saying? Our kin folks, whatever. But
All,
this guy, what's the saying? I can't remember.
all skin folk is not kinfolk.
Thank you. And so this guy has been probably the worst representative that I've seen in modern history in terms of a statewide leader. I've not seen anybody worse than him in terms of his tone, his demeanor, and the crazy stuff that he says. He's a conspiracy theorist, according to reports. And he got so bad, and Renee is correctly on our chat box, he got uninvited from the Trump rally in North Carolina. So that's got to be really bad, because he had that nutcase Loomis, who said that 9/11 didn't happen. So you had people that Trump has surrounded himself with, and this guy is more extreme than they are.
It's almost like they want to outdo each other. I would say something worse than that guy, so I can be on top of him. I don't know.
Well, the other thing that was been on the news that we haven't discussed, and my crack analysts always pick these things up, that is Springfield, Ohio. And on the YouTube, there was a video, a guy made a record of this. He was saying they're eating dogs, they're eating cats, they're eating pets. And so the net result is, the story got started is that there's a Caucasian female, white female, who reported her cat missing. And she thought the cat was taken by her Haitian neighbors. Well, so she filed a report, it goes viral, and her cat was down in her basement. The cat was down in her basement. So now we have a false police report that somehow became magnified to suggest or imply that the Haitian was stealing their pets and eating their pets. And so now we had, I saw, what was it, 28 or 38 bomb scares? It was something incredible that has happened to this community. And they have a Republican mayor, and they had some deplorable conditions in Haiti country. They had rampant violence, and you had gangs that took over the country. I think they murdered the president or prime minister. It was just an outright deplorable situation. And a lot of these things, imbalance like that, are caused by outside interference and things like that. But in any event, so these people entered the country through the legal process, folks. So they entered the process of the United States of America the same as probably 95% of the people in this country, or a great majority, through the legal process. And because of that, now all of a sudden, we have this racial attack on folks because of immigration. It's shameful.
Yeah, Nate, you said something that reminded me of, I saw, what's the oh God, as much as I love Indian food, what is this Vance was on a program the other week. I saw him, and he was saying, we're missing the issue here. We're talking about small things. Who cares whether or not, what's the Indian food called?
Ramasamy or something.
No, it's this kind of a sauce or soup. Come on, Vanita, help me.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Anyway, he said, who cares whether or not it's that food or fried chicken in the White House? And he went on to say, he was very dignified when he said
Curry.
that. Curry. Thank you. Who cares whether you smell curry or fried chicken? Nobody has said anything about fried chicken in the White House. But it was another one of those little racist, to me, it was one of those little, I got one over on those fools and they didn't catch that. And the interviewer didn't say anything about the fried chicken reference. It was passed on by. So we got racism up, brother. It's alive, it's well, and it's in our face today. And the Haitians that went to Ohio to help the economy there and to help the people there are getting paid now in another way with hate.
These are absolutely false rumors that no evidence has been produced to substantiate. And there are an estimated 12 to 15,000 Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. They're legally authorized to live and work in the United States. They're also protected from expulsion from the U.S. by law. They're productive, citizens, and they hold what's called a temporary protected status that has been extended to currently the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden expanded protections for Haitians once again and ruled that the more than 300,000 Haitians from the country who arrived in the U.S. After November 2022 were eligible to apply for the temporary protective status, while allowing more than 200,000 Haitians whose protections may have been expiring for a 18-month extension. And then, of course, we know the current instability in Haiti that's occurring right now as we speak. Haitian nationals were first granted this TPS status in 2010 after a catastrophic earthquake that unfortunately and tragically claimed more than 100,000 lives and just overwhelmed the government.
Well, they're now targets for hate, and they're now targets for another movement's progression. And so all of that is well, and I appreciate it, but now someone has picked them to be their scapegoat. So
the latest scapegoat, the continued othering,
yes.
Which is the playbook that is being, executed by the GOP, and it has resulted in Haitians fearing coming out of their homes in Springfield. Schools are being locked down because of bomb threats and other threats. And it's just an intolerable situation. And to me, I don't know if I mentioned this before, that of course we've talked about First Amendment freedoms, but to me, this kind of thing is akin to falsely crying fire in a crowded movie theater. And so these kinds of false accusations, from my perspective, should not enjoy First Amendment protection.
Hey, Milton, what
yes?
bothers me is that the political discourse that we're witnesses now, we're the United States of America, so we're united. And so what they're doing is a radical departure of what we stand for, what makes America exceptional. We witnessed in the Olympics, and we saw the diversity. We saw African American, we saw Hispanic, we saw Caucasian, and we all band together, and we were so proud that we dominated the Olympics. No single group of America could have accomplished that feat by themselves. It was the collective effort of being united. And so we have political discourse, Attorney Banks, that is solely meant to divide us as a nation. One week we're attacking women's rights. The next week we're attacking Hispanic. Then we're attacking Haitian. And what do all these have in common? We have one group of political party people who are advocating these racial tropes. And like you said, Milton, and we made reference to the curry and chicken at the White House. And so, and they've normalized aberrant behavior. So that how, in my opinion, you get a nutcase like Mark Robinson, who is not a serious person, who starts his political career by advocating that someone should be killed. So now we go to his website, alleged website, that shows all this crazy stuff, this pornographic website and things like that. So we got a guy, in my opinion, is a nutcase who got elected lieutenant governor, and his political discourse become normal. However, it's so extreme that what Trump them think is normal is abnormal even for them. And so we see more and more of this. And so the only thing we could do as citizens is today to make sure we're properly registered and make sure that we call 10 or more people, have them call 10. We have to vote. We got to show up.
What are we going to do, though, Nate, about this lie on lie on lie? Like this guy, Mark Robinson, is saying he's disowning it. He can lie about that. And I saw Trump on major news last week saying he was not associated with 2025. I don't know if any of you saw that or not. But now I'm looking at this news break that in a stunning leak, Donald Trump gave the keynote address at the Heritage Foundation, where he announced the work the foundation did, parenthesis, on Project 2025 would be critical to his policy goals. Retweets so all Americans show Trump will enact Project 2025. So he's double talking, he's lying. He's going to use that as his platform, his policy rather. Vanita, can't you stop this stuff?
Well, I think there needs to be consequences for outright lying that cause damages and injury to individuals like the Haitians. To me, there should be some type of criminal accountability for outright lies. We have created words that never existed 5 years ago, I believe. Disinformation and misinformation, for example. They shouldn't be terms. The bottom line is that they're outright lies, right? And so, as you stated, Attorney Lee, we've normalized this, from my perspective, criminal behavior in many instances. There should be accountability to tell the truth. And that's not happening. I was doing some research, Attorney Grimes, back to your point regarding the remarks that the former president made at a convening of the Heritage Foundation. And my research discovered that the Heritage Foundation was formed in response to Brown versus Board of Education. They were mad and upset about it. And so this so-called think tank was established to address Brown versus Board. And the fact that segregated schools are inherently unequal, so that's
their
based
origin.
on what I read is the origin of the Heritage Foundation. And they, have, my understanding is that they underwrote the Reagan administration. Some of those policies had a very negative impact on African-American men, the so-called, quote, war on crime. And then you have their war against wokeness. And so but we're hearing, these are just all vehicles, these are examples for anti-Blackness or brownness in this nation. And it's an old playbook. It's not new. We've discussed this on earlier calls. What do? You dehumanize your opponents. First, democracy, as you know, depends on having at least two strong parties, right? And so you really don't have a Republican Party that looks like anything that we've ever, understood in the last, 5 years or so. And so then what do? You demonize them, you say lock them up. Then you stack the courts is one tactic. Another one is, of course, to demonize the media. And the former president has stated that he will be a dictator on day one, and that he will weaponize the Justice Department and actually attack those that he views as opponents.
Vanita, I hate y'all didn't see Vance make that statement in a calm and collected manner about smelling curry and fried chicken in the White House, and just kept on talking. Nobody said anything about it. It was
Well, it's racism, in its highest forms.
yes.
And I just always analogize this to my career in corporate America, where, with statutory protections like affirmative action and Title VII, you could think those things in the workplace, but if you said them, guess what? You'd be fired. You'd be fired. So people have been thinking about these things, having these kind of thoughts. And as you approached 2015, and when you're hearing the majority at that time in the workplace hear that they're no longer the majority, that the workplace is going to be female and Black and brown, that causes a certain anxiety and and fear. And so, as the former president came down that escalator several years ago, spewing hate and fear, it played into, unfortunately, potentially 25 to 40% of this nation's worst fears.
Goes back to making America what it was again.
So I guess we go back to World War I, we go back to slavery. I mean, when I first started seeing Make America Great Again, my response was, America's already great. What do you mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Hey, Milton, there's something that was significant about that. In their political spin on the story about the curry and the chicken, the way the political pundit explained it on the conservative outlet is that he was referring to the fact that he loved chicken, his wife, who's from India, loved curry. I mean, it's got to be the dumbest response, but believe it or not, their followers said, "Oh, that makes sense."
Yeah. Nah, brother. It was a sting to me. It was a punch to me. It was like, you mother. Yeah.
Renee has made some excellent points in the chat box. We're wondering what happened that resulted in Mark Robinson becoming the lieutenant governor. And I think you mentioned, Milton or Nathaniel, that he got a significant segment of the Black vote in North Carolina.
Yeah, he did.
We expect the best from our people. We give them that automatic trust, and they betray us when they do what he's done. But that's who we are, though, Vanita. You know that. We trust you because you're Black.
And also he visited all those Black churches and stuff. And some of his messaging initially resonated because even this week, for example, you saw the legendary coach Tony Dungy chime in on the issue of abortion. So a lot of the fundamentally the Christian folks believe that abortion is wrong, right? And so the net result is they'll harp on a single issue and use that as a basis to vote for a person, and so we see more and more of that. So I think that this guy had a few issues like that people gravitated to, and he won. And
Could you
also,
clear up about Dungy, please, for me? Tony is supporting Trump because of the abortion issue, or what?
well, uh, he had a subtle jab at uh, the vice president on the issue of abortion. His article was republicized. He wrote an article on Twitter or something that got millions of views. And I don't have it in front of me, but essentially he was quoting Bible verses in a nutshell to support the notion that abortion is wrong and that she's wrong on this issue of abortion. And I'm thinking to myself, these so-called sports heroes, sometimes they say some of the dumbest things.
Yes, they do. Yes,
And so never mind the fact that he's adjudicated to have raped a woman or sexually assaulted a woman in a department store, can't do business in the state of New York because he's a fraudster, that he's got fines and penalty out of the wazoo, $95 million for sexual assault in line, 34 felony conviction, goes on and on and on. And that's okay. That apparently be okay. So you could be the most corrupt, morally unfit person, that's okay. But what we think, we're going to make our decision on the fact that he support abortion. Well, not really. He support whatever the political wind says he should support.
Now, was Coach Tony Dungy's, were these resurgent comments that he had made? Because he had made some comments earlier, or are these new statements that he's made regarding abortion?
Well, it was it came across the wire, and I'll read out Tony Dungy.
Well, I'm sort of attached to Tony Dungy because of the loss of his son, and I empathize with him about that for years ago because I've lost a son, but I didn't know he was politically to the right that far.
Well, I know he's religious, but or a Christian. I'm a Christian. And so, but you can hold religious beliefs for yourself, but you don't have the right, in my opinion, to dictate those on other people.
I believe that, Vanita, to a degree, but we see that our entertainers and our athletes are taking political positions now more so than ever before. And I guess we got to deal with that.
Absolutely, on both sides of the aisle. But you go back to President Obama and his earlier views regarding the LGBTQIA community. And he was in favor of, what was he in favor of? He was in favor of providing medical benefits for same-sex couples, but he was proposed to the idea of, marriage, right? But his own children changed his view on that, right? Yeah. So we evolve, if we're life learners, in our thinking as we strive to have greater understanding of matters, right?
Right.
So we saw President Obama's evolution in that regard, as well. So I analogize that back to the discussion we're having about Tony Dungy. He is free to believe that, right? And he's also free to, to his opinion, and others are free to have the opinion that, yes, you can hold a firmly held religious belief, and that's not inconsistent with the idea that only a woman has the ultimate control over and authority regarding decisions made about her own body.
That age thing may be the major difference there, though, Vanita, with Tony and Obama, in that when you get up at our age, like I'm 79, and I understand the old thinking that it doesn't get new after a while, and it's difficult to get progressive unless you have a 20-year-old in your house who won't let you stay dumb.
Well, wait a second. Let me tell you exactly what this actually said. the vice president said, quote, one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held belief to agree, colon, the government and certainly Donald Trump should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. And Tony Dungy's response was, dear Vice President Harris, I hear you make this statement all the time. Exactly what, quote, faith are you talking about when you say you don't have to abandon it to support abortion? Or are you talking about the Christian faith that say all babies are made in the image of God? He cites Genesis, that God placed them in the womb, Jeremiah, and that we should not take any life unjustly, Luke. Or are you talking about the faith of some nebulous general faith that says we're good enough and smart enough to make our own decision? What faith are you talking about? So, in a nutshell, what she was saying is he twisted what she said slightly, and also, in my opinion, he kind of misquoted the Bible.
Well, the Bible also says that when you're pointing your hand at, another person, that you got four pointed back at you. I mean, there are lots of biblical scriptures that can be quoted to address any number of issues. My opinion on this is that, everybody has accountability to God, and that, my grandfather used to say that it takes him 6 months to mind his own business and 6 months to leave everybody else's alone. So what somebody else is doing in their doctor's office is not my business. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's too many people trying to get into the office. Let's take a caller. Identify yourself. You have a question or comment for us today.
Yeah, hi. I have a comment. I'm not, I believe in a higher power, but I'm not necessarily a religious person. I don't go to church every week. My father is a Baptist minister, so it has a lot to do with that. But anyway, my point is that I do know some of the Bible, and it says that God gives humans free will to make choices for themselves. So why are we not letting people choose what they are can do with their bodies? That's their choice. And if somebody believes they're on a path to go to hell, well, that's a choice, that people may have to make for themselves, whether they believe that that's the case. But I don't think God is that narrow to believe that people making choices to protect themselves and their children and their families is going to go to hell. We can look at the other side of the political spectrum and see that they rely heavily on religion to justify all the evils and the bad things that they do. So, having said all that, I don't believe that we could use religion to browbeat people and beat them down because they make choices that are available to them and for their health and their well-being and the safety. I don't believe we would have this medical technology if it were not for a higher power, and that higher power put it in our hands so that we can do good, not bad. And so I don't think we can rely solely on religion like that. And I'm not sure about what's going on with Tony Dungy and his beliefs, but I'm not going to criticize him for his beliefs or anything like that. But that is his choice, his life, but he does not have a right to put that on other people's rights and freedoms. I certainly, also my other point about the situation with North Carolina and Robinson, we really have got to stop thinking that all skin folk are kinfolk. They just are not.
Hey, thank
and
you.
we just need to.
I screwed that up earlier. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. And we just got to stop that. I don't know what's going on with Robinson, but I don't think this man has owned the mirror in his life, because if he did, he would understand he does not have white privilege. I don't care how much you might want to spout white privilege, language, but the first thing they see about you is when you walk in a room. I even have to do this with my groups that are mostly female activist groups, that they somehow forget that Kamala Harris is first seen as a Black person, and then they look at her gender. And you can tell that because they were trying to get rid of the ticket, and they were interested in putting another woman in who was not a Black woman. They were interested in putting in Whitmore. They didn't think, well, we got a VP here who could possibly take over this position. But instead, what they did was they said, well, let's have an open convention. We'll even consider a woman, just not that woman. We consider Whitmore before we consider her. Thank you, and I'll let you go.
You know, that lady reminds me of a book I read not too long ago titled Papa Bull. It was written regarding the Pope in 1493, writing a 40-some page, whatever you call it, the Papa Bull, where he was blessing and endorsing and directing Dutch shipmen in another country to go forth across the ocean and possess and take all land and property that they saw that was occupied by heathens and savages, and bring it back to the king or the queen and take it over and kill and slay all those who did not support their taking. And that's what I think of when I think about people using religious phrases in the Bible to justify their opinions. It doesn't enforce anything to me personally, and I'm gonna put my neck out on that.
Hey, caller, you had a question or comment for the next caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a little bit late getting into the show, probably about 15 minutes, but my question is, you three very professional attorneys, what do you think the chances are of us having a confirmed election final on the night of the election? And I'm asking that based on the fact that Georgia just passed this new law to have their election attendants recount all the votes. I'll hang up and listen.
Well, the answer to that is really simple. If we get wins in the blue wall, that is Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and let me see, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, what's that third state? And Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
Michigan?
and Michigan. If we win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, those electoral vote versus the East Coast and West Coast will give us the 270. You know, we're looking at, you know, it's one poll said we have 225. Trump has like 220 or something. So if you win those, you get that extra 50 votes, electoral votes, to get you to 270. And so now the call make a good point, because this election is going to be very close. Because it's going to be such a close election, particularly with shenanigans they're trying to pull down in Georgia, in places like that. But in Michigan, we have Democrat governor. In Pennsylvania, we have Democratic governor. And in Wisconsin, we have Democratic governors, although we have a Republican-controlled legislature in Wisconsin. But the point I'm making is that I believe that we should have a good election, and it should be conducted professionally and should be as accurate as prior elections. Elections are not perfect, but in this country, we have the best electoral system in the world, in my opinion. So I trust the process. I don't trust what they're doing down in Georgia. They're playing fast and loose. And so I think that there's going to be some problems in that state.
We're also seeing in Nebraska, there's a push to help the former president win all 5 of the electoral college votes in Nebraska. Nebraska and Maine are the only 2 states that have not moved to a winner take all. And so there's an impetus currently in Nebraska with one of the proponents being Lindsey Graham, advocating. From what I understand, they currently lack the votes, but that could be a critical state as well. They only have 5 electoral votes, but from what I'm reading, let's hope that they will continue to lack the votes to make that change this election year.
Hmm. Well, that's a good point. But at the end of the day, the election will be won if we get particular African Americans out to vote like we've never voted before. If we turn out to vote in this election in record numbers, we should be okay. There's a lot of Haley voters that are crossing over, and there's a record number of Republicans, office holders, and officials that are supporting the Democrat candidate. Unprecedented. I've never seen so many Republicans. Now, and the odd thing about it, we look at Donald Trump, most of the people that held high positions, like the vice president and people like that, they're not voting for him. They're not supporting him, which should give the average Republican some concern. If the people that know him best up close think that he's unfit to run, maybe they know something that we don't all know, that he's really unfit to run.
Yeah, I saw a program during the week. It's an old program. It's about 3 years old, dealing with his psychological makeup, and a discussion by several psychiatrists and psychologists. Like I said, it's an old 3-year-old docudrama on Trump and things that he's saying, the analysis of him. But Nathaniel, the majority of the people that support him or support him are the people in the outlying areas, and they believe what this man has promised them or is promising them. And it's not as simple as we may think. Well, how can they believe that? They believe it because they want to believe it, and they need to believe it, and they feel that it's affecting their economic status and their children's future. And you know, a man will do what he has to do to protect his children's future, and that's what Trump is promising them.
But it's called, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Vanita.
But it's called cognitive dissonance, where I'm going to vote against my best interests, right? Because certainly giving tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires isn't in the best interest of everyday working class people.
But I'm voting for it for what my interests are, that I've been led to believe is in that vote, right?
What I have a lot of Republican clients, right? And I have some of my golf buddies are hardcore Republicans, right? And one thing that they have in common, that I always ask this question, this is a very important question. Do you believe in the national news media? Every Trump supporter I've ever talked to said the media only gives out misinformation. They have no faith in the national media. I said, where do you get your news from then? If it's not from Fox, where are you getting your news from? And so what I see is a commonality that have worked in terms of getting out messages. Trump says the media is all wrong. And so the people that believe that, no matter what he does, you know, they're in disbelief. If he said it's not true, then they take his word for it. It's just the most shocking thing.
Right.
If somebody have an answer for that, let me know. Because I've tried different approaches to my friends to try to get them to see the light, and it ain't working, Milton.
Right, I know. That's what I'm saying is the problem. You know, he's got a strong light shining on what he wants them to believe.
And Renee also made another point. She wanted to know, why aren't the Democrats targeting Black men and men in general, that the Dobbs decision not only affect women, but them also? Actually, they are, Renee. The Indiana is not in political play, so we don't get the massive advertisement and literature being done in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So the battleground states, we're seeing $1 billion in ads, and those ads covers all this stuff. But in our state, because we have a strong Republican majority, and we, in other words, we don't see that. But they are targeting African American males because I saw an ad when I was out of town. They were very instructional. It was showing that the abortion issue affect men in the same light as women in this respect. They were showing a young freshman in college and a boyfriend, she get pregnant, and said that it's life decision that they have to make as parents and as teenagers, and things like that. So even though the young lady have the baby, but the young man has to drop out of school to support the baby if he's do what's right. And so we're seeing it affect both people differently, but it adversely affect both of the teenagers. And it was instructional, so they covered that. And it was one of those decisions that should be left between the woman and her physician, and or the family and their physician, but not the government.
Right.
But in any event, closing comment, we got 1 minute left.
Well, I think those of us who think we see the truth, we got the responsibility of trying to talk to those of us that we believe are being led by this fake news that they hear. So help them go out to vote, help them go out and vote for the right party.
Early voting has begun in some states. Virginia, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Here in Illinois, in some counties, early voting will begin as early as September 26th. So I put a link in the chat box where you can go to determine by state when early voting begins.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And next week, we were dealing with legal issues of the day. So stay tuned. And don't forget, check your registration and let's get prepared to vote, folks, and vote like we never voted before. So thank you. Take care, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.